Hello and welcome to another episode of Dad's Divorce. I'm your host, Dan Cuneo. Today we are fortunate to have back with us Michael Doherty, who will be speaking about equal parenting, who is the chair of the Children's Rights Council of Illinois. Mr. Doherty, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And the website that talks about non-custodial parent support groups and legislative change and things that you are working on is equalparentingillinois.org?
Yep.
Okay. And I guess there's some changes going on over on the Missouri side, and I know we've got a lot of clients who are pretty interested in what's going on dealing with some of the child support issues and arrearages and custody time. So what exactly have you been working on? And I realize that that's a pretty broad question, but I kind of wanted to turn it over to you, and so you can kind of update some of the issues that you have brought to the attention of the legislature that you've been trying to implement and that you have changed.
We, of course, we testified to the Family Law Study Committee last winter, January, and then we met and continued to be involved with them and fed them a critique upon their request, a critique of a lot of the proposals that have been submitted to them, or a bulk part of those proposals, and we critiqued those for the committee. That went on through the spring, so that took up a lot of our time, was working with that committee, and that is a recommendations committee. They'll feed recommendations back to Illinois General Assembly next year, is the expectation. And then we continue to meet with, when we can, with reaching out directly with judges, also with family law attorneys and GALs, basically industry professionals, anybody who's willing to, have lunch with us and, or breakfast, and and talk to them about, share with them things that we think that, the fact that we know, or we've been told, I should say, by people in the industry, look, these are things that judges could be doing differently today. And I've heard that on your show. I think it's quite correct that a lot of the issues non-custodial parents have do not require a change in Illinois state law. It just simply requires the judges to reasonably interpret the laws we have.
What, in your opinion, regarding custody, what can the judges do differently?
Well, our focus as an organization is not on custody per se. It's on the reduction of the polarizing of the child-parent balance and relationships after custody's been determined. So we're really not that involved, although you might, if you were calling it parenting time, now that's something we're very focused on. We want to preserve the bond, as Illinois law requires, between both parents and the child, and also a parental role for both parents, because that's part of your bond with your child.
Which would be continuing meaningful and frequent contact.
Absolutely, and we don't consider it meaningful when it's 4 overnights out of a month. I bounce this off. It's interesting that the people who are the most agreeable that is not a reasonable schedule are mothers. When I talk to them, I talk to as many custodial mothers as I do non-custodial fathers every month here, and they tell me, well, I couldn't possibly maintain my parental relationship and bond on that kind of a schedule.
Right. When you flip it to the other side, they think that is unfair.
And it's not even fairness. They recognize it. If they tell me flat out, they go, that would just about destroy my parenting relationship. And
that's an issue that comes up, unfortunately, day in and day out for people who come in here getting a divorce or trying to modify an existing parenting plan. Is that 4 days a month it boils down to essentially every other weekend. You're a weekend parent.
Yep. And with that comes all the bad things like Disneyland dad phenomenon. Recent research came out that showed that when moms are only given every other weekend overnights to their kids, they become Disneyland moms. That's not healthy parenting. There's all sorts of other things. Fathers don't get hardly involved with the school. The divorced dads, that is, have no incentive to be involved with the school because their only, interaction is on one day out of the week where they pick the child up from school for a few hours, and oftentimes that's the day of the week, Wednesdays, when the child doesn't have any homework. So they have almost no involvement, with the kids' schooling. And here the schools want the fathers more involved.
Right.
So yeah.
What would your advice be to a father who wants to continue to be an active participant in his child or children's life when during the marriage they're either an equal caretaker or essentially the primary caretaker, but now they're facing a potential parenting plan which would make them a Disneyland dad?
Yeah, almost like banishes their parenting role. That's a really tough one. I mean, that's the ones where the fathers are, virtually in tears. They're depressed. Whether it be, and obviously not. And I want to make sure everybody understands this. Non-custodial mothers go through the same thing, and I find it just as tragic. And I'm very familiar with non-custodial mothers and what they have dealt with, and it's terrible. This cutting off, this kind of a parentectomy, it was called one time, of their parenting role. And so, what can you do? We do talk to them about whatever you do. Stay as involved as possible. Stay up on your child's medical, dental, and school performance and records. Oftentimes, we do get a lot of complaints that either the people at the front office at those service providers are not helpful in providing the records. We tell them, well, go back in there, and here's the Illinois statutes. You can give them to guarantee your access. Things like that. We suggest they try to encourage their ex to join them in family counseling. We are basically proponents to a degree of non-court type intervention practices to the extent that is possible. Mm-hmm. Therapy, we don't make recommendations as an organization, but we share our experiences with, for instance, family counselors, and we may, and one thing we do is we also steer. I'm glad you asked that question. We steer non-custodial parents toward local resources. Many of them do not know, for instance, within a reasonable distance where they live, there may be a Dads Helping Dads group, and we're familiar with those, and we'll steer them there. There are on meetup.com. It's a website for meetups in a big city of Chicago. There's ones up there and I've been to some of them. They're quite good on divorce support groups. There's local support groups oftentimes in their community that they're not aware of. Some are church-based, some are not. A lot of those kinds of services would be really helpful to these divorced non-custodial fathers, and they don't know they exist.
Now, are these resources available on your website, equalparentingillinois.org?
We haven't listed them all, but now that I'll get right on that. A lot of these can be Googled up. They could talk to their church people. They certainly can contact us. If they go to our website, Google up Children's Rights Council of Illinois or Yahoo up, whatever you want, search engine, and drop us a note, and we'll chase it down. We'll try to help find out what's available in your area.
Now, being a chair of the Children's Rights Council of Illinois, what are some of the issues that you're facing?
Well, the real typical ones, we hear about. We get email notes, and they typically prioritize the top few issues. Hear a lot of, unhappily, about parental disparagement, and I know that either side could be doing that, and I wouldn't be surprised if, to some extent, both sides are doing it. But disparaging themselves as a parent within earshot of their child, or just being non-cooperative, non-supportive of their role, that's one we hear a lot. Now remember, a lot of these parents who are contacting us are doing so during the divorce process or right afterwards. So hopefully this stuff kind of calms down over time, but sometimes it doesn't.
Right, once the dust settles, hopefully they'll realize and recognize that, hey, we're parents, we need to look out for what's in the best interest of our child.
Yeah, put the kids first, we call it, And I know we have co-parenting classes that try to do that, but, if you're in the middle of a divorce, there's at least one party that probably isn't going to sink in on at that time. It may sink in on 3 years later. We hear a lot of complaints about lack of access. They just don't have the access to the kids they want. Obstruction or parents ignoring the terms of a parenting agreement. That we get a lot of complaints about. And everybody will tell you, parenting agreements on paper are not worth very much. I think even judges, say they're very impossible to enforce almost, So, that's just one of those perennial issues, I think. And there are ways to improve it, though. All these things we take very seriously, and we look for how can we help, improve that situation. We do get some complaints about relocation. And, of course, you're always going to get complaints about child support, partly because, unhappily, part of child support is a windfall for the parent who receives it. And so there's a lot of litigation gets caught up in kind of, as you know as an attorney, right, revolves around who gets the child support, So that issue comes up for discussion.
Right. And unfortunately, people try to rush into the court system without trying to resolve the issues of any type of potential contempt between themselves. And so they're tying up the court system when cases that need to be heard are not going to be able to be heard for several months down the road.
Okay. Well, I don't know if this fits in with what your point you're making there is. We do have mandatory mediation here,